It's Sunday Night Dead. I'm your guide, Grateful Don. It's good to have on the show Mark Purdy, who is the informational officer for San Jose Rocks, a nonprofit celebrating the history and the music of San Jose. Did you know that the Grateful Dead played their very first show under the name Grateful Dead in San Jose? It's true. Here to tell us more about it and a special event to take place on December 4th, please welcome to Sunday Night Dead, Mark Purdy. How's it going, Mark?
I am at the top of my game, Don. I'm
well, that's
ready
good.
to discuss all things December 4th, 1965.
We just got done celebrating 60th anniversary at Golden Gate Park, and now we're going to focus on this big event that's taking place in December, and you have got all the details on that. The very first time the Grateful Dead played under that name actually took place in San Jose. Is that right?
That is correct, and that is the actual 60th anniversary of the Grateful Dead in December 4th, 1965. I have been pursuing and studying that event for probably 10 years, Don. I am not a Deadhead. I am not a Grateful Dead scholar. However, I am an admirer of the Grateful Dead and love their music. And I am also a big fan of San Jose history. I live in San Jose. And when I was, I made a living before I retired as a sports journalist, traveled around the country a lot and read a lot of books. And I was reading the book Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test on one of my road trips. And it came across this chapter. It said, they changed their name, and the first place they played was this acid test that Ken Kesey put together in downtown San Jose. And I said, really? I didn't know that. Where was that? And so I dove into that and discovered a lot about it. We can get into it. I don't want to do all the talking here. I know you probably have questions. But, yes, December 4th, 1965 was the first performance as the Grateful Dead. That's the actual 60th anniversary of the band, in my opinion, and we're going to celebrate that on December 4th, 2025, by, drum roll please, unveiling a plaque that will be placed on the site of the actual site of that performance, which turns out to be in downtown San Jose, and was in a big Victorian house there, which is since not there. It's now not there. But guess what's there? San Jose City Hall. In 2005, San Jose City Hall was built on that spot. So we are going to unveil a plaque with the Steely logo on it that will be placed on the exterior of the San Jose San Jose City Council chambers at City Hall on December 4th, 1965. Everybody's invited, and we promise. The city has given us approval for this. And we promised them we would raise all the money for that. And we have so far raised enough money to pay for the plaque, maybe the installation, but we also we have to pay for the celebration, right? And so we're trying to raise money for that, and we are raising money for that. And if you go to the sanjoserocks.org webpage, it will take you to all the information about that. Now I'll shut up, and what questions do you have?
Oh, don't shut up. We're just getting into it. Mark Purdy, we're talking with. He is the chief information officer, I guess, for San Jose Rocks, and what a great subject. Now, you actually ran into Ken Kesey. You have an interesting story about how you met Ken, who, of course, put together the acid test that took place on December 4th. Tell me about that.
Well, that was just by chance because in 1984, when I first came to San Jose to work at the Mercury News covering sports, the Super Bowl was at Palo Alto at Stanford Stadium, and the Mercury News employed, among other employees, including myself, a guy named Lee Kornstrom, who had been a member of the Merry Pranksters, Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters, his followers. That, conducted right. And so there was a meeting, I guess, held of the editors, and they said, what can we do special for our Super Bowl coverage? And Lee Kornstrom says, why don't I get in touch with Kesey? Maybe he'd like to write something for us about the Super Bowl. Everybody thought that was a good idea. They did. He agreed to do it. He came down to San Jose the week of the game, and wrote this crazy piece. But he came into the office, the Mercury News office, to write it. And he just, so I don't know how he ended up in, the sports department, but there he was.
Huh.
And he sat down at the desk next to me and introduced himself. And I said, "Hi, here's who I am. I know who you are." And he said, "Can you help me get this set up here?" And I did in front of the terminal. And I was sitting down writing my column, and he was sitting down writing what he was next to me. And he turned to me and says, "Do you have a thesaurus?" "I need a thesaurus." I said, "Yeah, sure, I have a thesaurus here." And I handed him my thesaurus. And I was pleased to see, an amazing writer like that was grinding. He was really grinding.
Yeah.
And, working on it as I was on my column. Him maybe at a little different level than me, but so I was finished with mine. He was still going. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to split. Nice meeting you. Can't wait to read your piece. When you're done with the thesaurus, could you please put it back on my desk?" He said, Yeah, sure. He's right. And so I left, and I came in the next day, and no thesaurus. It wasn't on my desk. It wasn't in my desk. It wasn't on the desk he was in. It wasn't on the desk in the door's bag. So I could only conclude that he walked away with my thesaurus. So I tell people that Ken Kesey stole my thesaurus. And
that's a great story. What's another word for thief?
Yeah, well, he was still groovy.
Yeah,
if I could have anybody steal my thesaurus,
sure,
that would be one of the guys I would pick.
All right. Let's go back to December 4th, 1965. This party that took place in the Victorian House in San Jose was held by Ken Kesey, speaking of, and it took place on a special night in the city.
Yes.
Something else was going on that night. What was that?
Well, yes. Let me set the whole thing up. So this is in 1965. Kesey has become kind of an evangelist for LSD, which was legal at that time, and he was, doing lots of stuff to see the effects of LSD on his friends, and whatever, and tripping and all that. And so he came up with the idea of having acid tests to experiment and see, taking the LSD under different situations and different places. So the first acid test from my scholarship was at a house up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I think maybe Ken Babb's house.
That's correct.
There.
Yeah. SoCal.
But then he wanted to take it public. So now he says, where can we do that? Right? He was living up in La Honda at his place up there with the further school bus and all that. And so he's casting, his eye, where can we do this? Well, on December 4th, 1965, the Rolling Stones are playing a concert at San Jose Civic Auditorium on one of their first tours of America. Kesey gets the idea, well, if I can find a place in San Jose near that concert at the San Jose Civic Auditorium, I could stage the first public acid test there. And I'll get my pranksters, we'll make up some flyers, and we'll hand them out to people as they exit the Rolling Stones concert and tell them to come to this acid test at this address on South 5th Street in San Jose. Kesey had spent some time in San Jose. Neil Cassidy had lived not far from there. San Jose was a pretty hip place in those days. They
It sounds like
had
it.
clubs
Wow.
there that people like Jorma Kaukonen and Paul Kantner and Janis Joplin would play in these clubs. And anyway, so Kesey was familiar with downtown San Jose, and he knew this house in San Jose that some friends, that some people he was acquainted with knew. And in my scholarship about it, I don't want to get in too deep in the weeds here, but this house was notorious around the San Jose State campus. And as a matter of fact, I looked in the directory, 1965 directory, and it's listed as High House.
Oh, yeah, right? I guess so.
Right. So okay, great place for us to do something like this. So he goes there and he says, "Could we borrow your house for the night?" And the people there say, "Sure." And he goes in and dresses it up with his people with crazy colors and balloons and whatever else in there, and has acid there. Okay. Well. So the concert, and then he sends his prankster followers over to hand out those flyers, and post some stuff like hand-drawn posters around town. Can you pass the acid test? Come to this address. And so People do, and it's a crazy scene. I'm still uncovering information about it, and this is the point of the show where I ask if anybody. I know you have a great listener group here, Don. If anybody was there that night,
yeah,
I've talked to 2 people who say they were there that night. I've talked to other people who were there in the neighborhood that weren't at this place, but I'm still, anybody who was there that night or knows about this night or has information about that night, I'm still seeking. You can go to sanjoserocks.org. We have a button that says Tell Your Story. You can push it there. Anyway, so people do start showing up. Now we get to the most important part and the most important event in the history of the world, right? The Grateful Dead's first show. Kesey needs some music to augment this whole crazy thing he's doing. So he knows these guys from Palo Alto and Menlo Park who have been playing around town, around that area, in the clubs there and so forth, known as the Warlocks, but they were in there were other organizations called Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, Jerry Garcia and Pigpen, and these guys are playing in different leagues, but they're mainly as the Warlocks. Well, just days before this December 4th, 1965 event, they decided they're going to call themselves a different name, the Grateful Dead. And so Kesey calls them up and says, can you come play? They do. They load in, and all this crazy stuff's happening around them. And they play. The one reason I want to try to find a talk to as many people as possible is I want to know what was their set list that night,
yeah,
right? I know
right.
They played Wooly Bully. I know that.
You do, for sure.
But they played, whatever they were playing in that, So they play for like an hour or two as all this craziness is going on. And this is another crazy sidelight. And Bill Wyman, the bass player for the Rolling Stones, he writes his autobiography. And in the book, he remembers this night. He remembers they played in San Jose on December 4th, 1965. And he says that in this biography, he says, and Brian Jones and Keith Richards went over there and walked over there and came back, said it was just crazy. They didn't know what was going on. Think about that, Don.
Wow, yeah.
The night the Grateful Dead plays their first ever show as the Grateful Dead, 2 Rolling Stones might have been there.
That's incredible.
Right? Okay, so, but it spills out into the street. It's nuts. I'm sure the campus police just thought it was another crazy fraternity party or something. But it goes on, the Dead play a couple, 3 hours, but then it kind of goes on all night. And that, as we now know, was the first night the Grateful Dead played a show as the Grateful Dead. And so in covering all this information, I was determined that this event shouldn't be forgotten, right? And people here in San Jose are like, when I tell them this story, they go, "Really? That really happened here?" I said, "Yeah, it's in Tom Wolfe's book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test." It's, I've documented this stuff. Now, there are some other things I want to get into later, if we have the time, about some mysteries about this night, which is, again, why I want to talk to anybody who might have been there or knows about it. But that's the story, and that's what we want to celebrate on December 4th. We have some surprises planned already. We want to raise money so that we can have a really nice celebration and have a lot of fun. That'll include music, maybe some community events. All free if we raise, depending on how much money we raise, right? And,
all right.
And if you're really generous, we have some great premiums if you donate at certain levels. My colleague Dan Orloff, who's really the tip of the spear for San Jose Rocks, and he's the guy who founded and so forth, he's out of town today, but he arranged somehow for Stanley Mouse, the poster artist, to do a special poster for us to commemorate this 60th anniversary, December 4th, 2025. It's an amazing poster. You can go to sanjoserocks.org and see it. If you at a certain level of contribution, you get a handbill version of it. At another level, you get a poster. At the highest level, we have some that Stanley Mouse actually signed.
That poster is gorgeous. It's Stanley Mouse, as you said. It's the Jester.
If you go to the website also, sanjoserocks.org, there's a video that Dan did of his interview with Stanley where he explains why he put the poster together the way he did. Very, very cool. Yeah, and so that's been a fun part of this too. We're working real hard on this. I don't get paid. It's a nonprofit organization, and we're here to we want to make everybody first of all aware of this event. A lot of people don't understand that the Grateful Dead spawning grounds. They started out in Palo Alto and Menlo Park, and they played around here in the South Bay a lot. And how about this? I in my research about this, dug into the history room at the San Jose Library. So Garcia is playing in this band Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, and this is now in like 1963 or 64. It's a story in the San Jose State student newspaper where it says Garcia and these guys, San Jose State's playing football at Oregon, and they get a bus and they ride to Eugene, Oregon for what they call a hootenanny battle up in Oregon. I'm trying to picture this, right? Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Grateful Dead history in the South Bay.
I saw a show in San Jose in 1979, I believe. It was Brent Midland's very first show at San Jose State. So,
oh, wow. At the football stadium, probably, right?
Yeah. Spartan Stadium. So let's get the website for San Jose Rocks and where they can go to make their donations.
Yes, at sanjoserocks.org. That's the main page. And then right at the top, there is a story, a link that says, Grateful Dead 60th anniversary. Click here, and it takes you to the whole story about December 4th, 1965, and the buttons you can click to donate. And we appreciate anybody that could donate anything, $5, $10, and of course at the higher levels for the Stanley Mouse poster. And also, if you keep scrolling down on that page, you'll see some of the stuff I've worked on, including the mystery about whether the house was at 43 South 5th or 38 South 5th, and the mystery about that. Both houses, one was across the street from each other, right? And there's a video actually about that where Dan and I are talking about that on a TV report from Channel 5. Really interesting story about that. But both of them, essentially, we're right across the street from each other. The party's spilled out in the street. So we're going to put a plaque on that site. The story's all there on sanjoserocks.org. But, hey, thanks for letting me spout off about this and explain this. It's a fascinating... I find it hard to believe I'm like the leading scholar on this, to tell you the truth, Tom.
Right.
But I've been obsessed is not the right word, but fixated on it would be correct. Trying to pin down all the details of a very foggy night in 1965, the winter of 1965, where 60 years ago, nobody was taking careful notes, and of course they were dropping LSD. So
right.
Finding out information about it has been difficult, but I encourage everybody to go to that and help us out, either by just telling your story or, of course, by donating.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure having you on the show. And even though you say you're not a deadhead, it sounds to me like you're running right along with the bus and you're trying to hop on. I think we got room for you.
I respect the bus too much to proclaim myself.
Oh, come on.
But you know what? Hey, the Grateful Dead, my senior year in college in Chicago, they played the homecoming concert at Northwestern University.
Nice.
That was my first Dead show.
Awesome.
I saw them several times. I enjoyed it a lot. It's just I'm more of an R&B. I grew up in the Midwest, that kind of thing.
It's all good.
Yeah,
it's all
but
good.
You know what? And hey, I once talked to Jerry Garcia at a San Jose Giants game. They were singing the national anthem, and I asked him a very incisive question. Did you ever play Little League Baseball, Jerry? And
and he said,
No, I never played. He says, I was a softball guy. I'm a softball pitcher. I thought I was a pretty good softball pitcher. So that's an exclusive nugget that I got from Jerry Garcia.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for being a part of our evening here, Mark. Have a great day.
It was terrific, Don. I hope to talk to you again, and keep being groovy.